already knew it was bad news. No one called that early with good intentions or kind surprises. When he answered, still half awake and clutching the edge of his kitchen counter, the voice on the other end confirmed what he had been fearing for months. The factory was shutting down. Everyone was being let go. Effective immediately. Daniel hung up and stood there in the quiet kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator suddenly loud enough to hurt. In the next room, his 6-year-old daughter Lily slept curled around her stuffed rabbit, unaware that their fragile sense of stability had just collapsed. Daniel pressed his forehead against the cool wall and closed his eyes. He didn't have savings. He didn't have a backup plan. He only had a child who depended on him completely. Daniel hadn't planned on becoming a single dad. His wife Emma had been the brave one, the dreamer, the person who believed things always worked out in the end. Then cancer took her in less than a year, leaving Daniel with grief he didn't know how to carry and a little girl who asked for a mother every night. Life had not slowed down for his sorrow. Bills still arrived on time. Rent still demanded to be paid. And Lily still needed lunches packed, hair braided, and bedtime stories read. The weeks after losing his job felt like drowning in slow motion. Daniel applied everywhere. Grocery stores. Warehouses. Gas stations. Offices he didn't recognize. He was either overqualified, underqualified, or invisible. When callbacks came at all, the hours didn't work with Lily's school schedule, or the pay wouldn't cover childcare. Each rejection felt personal, like the world was quietly agreeing that he wasn't enough. One afternoon, while scanning job listings at the library with Lily coloring beside him, Daniel saw an ad pinned to a corkboard. Overnight janitor. Old Mountain View Care Facility. 3 shifts available. High turnover. Minimal pay. No benefits listed. The librarian noticed him staring at it and shrugged. She said no one lasted there. The building was old, isolated, and rumored to be haunted. Most people quit within weeks. Daniel wrote down the number anyway. He told himself it would be temporary. Just something to keep the lights on until something better came along. When he called, they hired him on the spot. No interview. No background checks beyond the basics. Start tomorrow night. That first night, Daniel walked through the heavy front doors of Mountain View with a knot in his stomach. The building smelled like antiseptic and age, a strange mix of cleanliness and decay. The halls were long and dim, lined with flickering lights and faded paintings meant to look cheerful but only added to the sense of abandonment. Most of the residents were asleep by midnight, and the place settled into an eerie stillness broken only by distant coughs and the slow squeak of his janitor cart. The work was harder than he'd imagined. Floors that never seemed fully clean. Bathrooms that carried the weight of too many years. He scrubbed and mopped until his arms ached, reminding himself with every stroke that this was for Lily. That thought carried him through the nights when exhaustion pressed heavy on his bones. On his third shift, near the end of a long hallway, Daniel heard singing. It startled him. The voice was soft, warm, and slightly off-key, floating out of a room with the door half open. He paused, heart racing, then peeked inside. A woman sat beside an elderly resident's bed, gently brushing the woman's hair while humming an old lullaby. The singer looked up, startled, then smiled in a way that didn't feel forced or polite. It felt real. Her name was Clara. She worked evenings as a caregiver, picking up extra shifts whenever she could. They talked briefly, hushed so they wouldn't wake the other residents. She apologized for being in his way. Daniel apologized for interrupting. Before he moved on, she thanked him for cleaning so thoroughly. She said it mattered more than people realized. It was the first time since Emma's death that someone had seen him without pity or obligation. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed often. Sometimes they talked while he emptied trash bins or sanitized counters. Sometimes they just shared small smiles across the hallway. Clara had kind eyes and carried herself with a quiet strength that suggested she'd weathered her own storms. Daniel learned that she lived with her younger brother, who had a physical disability, and that she'd put her own college dreams on hold to care for him. She learned that Daniel was raising Lily alone and working nights so he could be home during the day. They never pushed for more. Both had learned the danger of hope. But slowly, something gentle and steady grew between them. The job, however, continued to test Daniel. Sleep deprivation became a constant battle. He'd come home as the sun rose, wake Lily for school, and crash for a few restless hours before starting again. Some mornings, he fell asleep sitting up, only to wake with guilt clawing at his chest when Lily shook his shoulder. One night, a resident passed away quietly in their sleep. Daniel stood awkwardly at the end of the hallway as staff moved with practiced calm. Death no longer terrified him, but it reopened old wounds he tried hard to keep stitched closed. Clara found him later, sitting alone in the break room, staring at nothing. She didn't say anything at first. She just sat beside him and handed him a cup of lukewarm coffee. When he finally spoke, the words came out heavy and honest. He told her about Emma. About Lily. About how tired he was of pretending he was strong all the time. Clara listened. Really listened. She didn't try to fix his pain or fill the silence with advice. She simply stayed. That night marked a shift. Their conversations grew deeper. They shared regrets, fears, and small hopes they hadn't dared to voice aloud. Still, life didn't pause to give them space to explore what was forming. Then everything fell apart again. Lily got sick. It started as a fever, then turned into something worse. A doctor's visit led to tests, then more tests. Daniel sat in sterile rooms holding Lily's hand, the fear wrapping around his heart tighter with every passing hour. He missed shifts. He ignored calls from work. Nothing mattered except his daughter. When Lily was finally diagnosed with a severe infection that required extended treatment but promised recovery, Daniel felt relief collapse into dread. The medical bills were more than he earned in months. Insurance covered some, but not enough. He was already behind on rent. Mountain View called to inform him he'd been replaced. No warning. No discussion. He had missed too many nights. Daniel didn't tell Clara right away. Shame sat heavy on his chest. He felt like he was failing again, repeating a pattern he couldn't escape. Clara found out anyway. She showed up at the hospital one evening with a small bag of homemade food and a tired smile. When Daniel finally admitted the truth, he expected sympathy. What he got was determination. She helped him apply for assistance programs, contacted a social worker she knew, and even convinced her supervisor to put in a good word for Daniel at a community maintenance job tied to the care facility. It paid a little better, had daytime hours, and came with basic benefits. The interview was intimidating. Daniel almost didn't go, convinced it would be another disappointment. But Clara sat beside him the night before, helping him practice answers, reminding him of his worth. Reminding him that taking care of others had always been his strength. He got the job. Life didn't suddenly become easy. Lily's recovery took time. Bills still piled up. Clara still worked too many hours. But they began showing up for each other in small, meaningful ways. Clara helped Lily with homework. Daniel fixed things around Clara's apartment. Slowly, carefully, they became a family without rushing the name. Months later, Daniel stood at the same library corkboard where he'd first seen the janitor listing. He watched Lily flip through a book beside him, healthy and laughing again. Clara was there too, her hand resting lightly on his arm. That job no one wanted had humbled him, exhausted him, and nearly broken him. But it had also led him to a place where he was seen. To a woman who understood sacrifice and love without conditions. To a future that no longer felt like survival but possibility. Daniel realized then that sometimes life doesn't rescue you the way you expect. Sometimes it hands you a mop, a midnight shift, and a broken heart, and asks if you're willing to keep going anyway.